Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to anybody wherever you are. This is the first installment of Tetzeli Talks. My name is Kevin Gregg. I'm a partner at the law firm Kurzban, Tetzeli, and Pratt, and with me is Helena Tetzeli of Tetzeli Talks. How are you doing today, Helena?
I'm good, Kevin. How are you? How is the West Coast treating you today?
West Coast is always treating me excellent because it is the West Coast, the best coast. You know that because you were once in San Francisco yourself.
For several years, but I love my East Coast, Kevin, and I love Miami especially.
Well,
So
you've got to say that because you own a
to
house
agree to
there and your stuff.
disagree.
That's
Right.
right. For those of you who don't know, Helena Tetzeli is an equity partner at the law firm Kurzban, Tetzeli, and Pratt, she being the Tetzeli. She has over 25 years of experience in immigration law as well as business and just litigation generally. And during these talks, we're going to navigate through some of the ever-evolving trends and updates in immigration law and policy. Helena, I don't want to speak for you, but you're kind of like a Swiss Army knife when it comes to immigration complex issues. The issues that like literally no everybody else is like, do you have anybody who I could talk to about that weirdest thing I've ever heard? And that is kind of where you are most at home.
I like Swiss Army knife. I don't want to digress too much, but you reminded me of one of the nicest compliments I ever got from our fellow partner Ira Kurzban, which he referred to me as and I don't know anything about baseball, a utility pitcher or something like that, which apparently means multi-purpose. So I took it as a compliment. But yeah, I know I'm a generalist. I'll put it that way.
Well, you're more than a generalist too, though. Like you
I have
because of
areas
the case
that I specialize in, but
because of the cases that come your way, you kind of touch on all of the weird issues that, I mean, obviously case law in addition to litigation and all of that, but like the weird things that you can't just do a Westlaw search to find the answer for. Those are the things that you are kind of the first person to go to. So we were hoping to have these talks, these Tetzeli talks, regularly so we can inform the immigration bar and immigration attorneys of what's new and just weird things coming
and the public,
and the
whom
public,
we
weird
serve,
things coming
right?
our way that we think will help you navigate this crazy complex immigration
A
system.
lot of news this week.
There's a lot of news this week.
Immigration news, yeah.
I
Specific.
don't even know. I'm starting to lose track of the weeks, and that brings up to the first thing we wanted to talk about, which was the Biden administration's announcement that there is going to be a new parole type program. I don't even think that was this week. I think the
That
week.
was last week. You're right, because I'm looking at I have the press, I have the transcript of the press call, and it was June 17th. But it does. The days just go by so quickly now, that it does seem like it was just yesterday. But yeah, it was last week,
What
technically.
did the Biden administration say that they're going to do?
A couple of things, not necessarily fully fleshed out yet, but a couple of very important initiatives. The one most people are hearing about and talking about is this parole in place or PIP, which is a process we've always had, but now apparently is going to be applied to individuals who are in the United States, married to US citizens, who may be otherwise eligible to adjust status, but because of the way our laws are currently written, would normally, because they entered without inspection, if they wanted to legalize their status here through marriage to a US citizen, have to leave the United States, go to an interview at the US Embassy in their country, have a provisional stateside waiver approved before that, because most of them have been here for more than a year, without permission, and by leaving, they trigger a 10-year bar reentry. They have to show extreme hardship to a qualifying US relative, parent, or spouse. It's it's a very long, labor intensive, if you hire an attorney, expensive process, which has risks, because anytime you leave the United States and you don't have your green card or your visa or your US passport, you never know what's going to happen. You may not be able to return. So the Biden administration, I think pretty rationally is thinking, well, we're asking to turn all these legal cartwheels to come back in with a green card or a visa. Why can't we just process them in the US,
Right.
and avoid this kind of stress and burden on these individuals? So they're going to allow what's called parole in place. So that's important, because normally to adjust status in the US, you have to have an entry with inspection and parole, or with a visa. So there is something called parole in place, where it's legal fiction, but generally the government can just find that after the fact, they're paroling you in, and presumably the applicant will get some sort of document that says that, the parole in place application has been approved, and that makes them eligible, or at least able to meet that requirement to adjust status. They have to
We
be otherwise eligible to adjust status.
we've been doing this with military family members
Correct.
forever, right? I mean, there
Mhm.
is, of course, legal precedent. I don't think there's ever been a challenge to the government's ability to do it with military family members. And so that alone would seem to indicate that the government does have this power to do parole in place in America. And like you said, it's a legal fiction. Everything, of course, you just said, I've been asked about this as well. It's essentially a way to accommodate Congress's change of law in 1997, whereby no longer could you adjust the status in America if you initially came in without authorization. You have to have an inspection, admission, or parole. And
Correct.
so this gives certain non-citizen spouses that parole that is required, assuming that they're, for lack of a better word, a good person otherwise.
Correct.
I
And
got at one of the talks I was giving recently, I got a very intelligent question. This is not fair because, I mean, you and I have not talked about any of this beforehand, much less this question, but why is this legal when the courts struck down President Obama's DAPA program and when DACA itself is under challenge? And my initial thought to that was DACA, DACA and DAPA gave additional benefits. They kind of created a pseudo status, whereas this is much more limited and is only focusing on a parole and not about giving a pseudo status, but it is a
and the
parole.
regulations, I mean, these are not new regulations. They're just kind of reinterpreting existing law and regulations,
The
which
reason
allow
we're talking
parole.
about this is because we're both
Mhm.
anticipating that
There
right
will.
when the Biden administration issues regulations and immigration attorneys know what's going on, it will be
Mhm.
challenged in court.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is a good point to anyone who's a non-citizen listening to this. If an attorney is telling you right now that you need to give them money so they can apply for this for you, you need to run away because there are no instructions on how to do this yet.
We're still
No one
waiting.
can apply yet.
Exactly. So I'm getting a lot of calls from people who are interested and who may qualify. It seems like based on just the general guidelines we've been given, 10 years physically in the United States, married to a US citizen spouse as of, I think, June, the day they announced it, June 17,
Mhm.
2024. No criminal record, which would make the individual inadmissible. I presumably no outstanding removal orders. And I think it would be in the public interest. It wouldn't harm the public. I forget the exact wording of what was, discussed at the press briefing and in the press release. But you're right. We don't know which forms. We don't know if they're going to be filing fees. We don't know if there's any kind of hardship showing that's going to have to be made. So
Right.
we're still waiting on all that.
It's very interesting. And
Oh,
while the
Biden.
focus from the Biden administration is
I
clearly on assisting non-citizens and keeping family together, I don't think it shouldn't be lost the significant administrative burden that will be alleviated. All of the I-601A waivers, or many of them that you were
which are
mentioning.
taking about 3.5 years. Sorry to cut you off, but they're
No,
taking,
this is
yeah,
Tetzeli Talks.
yeah,
A
not
lot
in
of
the
them
works.
go away because you don't need them.
Uh-huh.
And the immigration, the EOIR, the immigration courts, a lot of these non-citizens who are in removal proceedings, who would, but for removal proceedings, be adjustment eligible, those cases maybe go away too, or they quickly resolve in favor of the non-citizen.
And I think hopefully that's something that the administration, calls attention to when they are challenged
Yeah.
on the legality of this. And also not just in the litigation that's probably going to occur, but just in the public realm, just the way it's portrayed by the press, because I think the administration has been portrayed to a certain degree unfairly as being very soft on immigration. So there are a lot of valid reasons for doing this. It would help the immigration system
Yep.
be more streamlined and more efficient. Yeah, and there's one other, they also talked about at this presser on June 17th about helping DACA recipients. Um, essentially transfer from DACA status to an H-1B status. They weren't too specific. They used the H-1B as an example of what they want to do, and their goal is to make it to facilitate DACA recipients into transitioning to some sort of more, I guess, fixed actual status, including an H-1B. There was really very little guidance on what that means. There were a lot of questions and they were a little vague, a little cagey, so we'll wait to see what that means. They mentioned that one of the policy reasons is to also help international students who are in the US be able to stay here. So this may be something that is intended to benefit DACA recipients educated here, but also students who are here maybe on F status, who haven't been able to get an H-1B because of the low cap we have on H's. So we'll have to wait and see what that develops into, but I'm hopeful that that will help keep some global talent here and help DACA recipients who certainly deserve it, in my opinion.
I'm gonna ask a follow-up question in a sec, but Ellie, for you to put anywhere, I'm just gonna say this. And I suppose we should probably date stamp this right now. We are talking during the afternoon of June 28th, 2024. So what we're going to talk about today is, I guess, current as of that time, place, and planet. But of course, immigration, as with everything, changes from day to day. Thanks, Helena. Thanks for that explanation of the DACA and the H-1B thing. But I mean, taking a step back, what is the H-1B visa and how could DACA individuals even benefit from that? Why is that the natural place for some of these people to flow into?
So an H-1B visa is a visa for someone who is going to be working in what USCIS calls a specialty occupation. That really just means typically a profession, someone with a professional degree. Classic examples, although it's not limited to classic examples, are engineers, architects, attorneys. And it's become a very popular visa for employers, US employers, a lot of big employers, FANG employers, Fortune 500 employers who want and can't find talent in the US in IT, finance, and some other fields. So the problem is that there's a very limited number of these visas that are allotted every year.
Right.
There's essentially a lottery. It's not officially called a lottery. It's an employer is allowed to register a prospective employee. Many of them are already working for the employer on their post-graduation OPT EAD. These are students who are here legally. And, you maybe have a 10% chance of being selected in the lottery. You've got students who are here with STEM degrees and they max out their 3 years of STEM OPT EAD, permission to work here post-graduation, and aren't able to stay here. They're not
Right.
able to get an H-1B. An H-1B is also a path to a green card. So many of these employees end up getting green cards. They end up being sponsored by the US employer, typically through the labor certification process, and ultimately, get lawful permanent residence status here and become US citizens. So it's a good path, but unfortunately an insufficient path due to the quota limits for a lot of professionals and people with the kind of assets and learning that we should want to keep in the United States.
I think it's well regarded and it's a good attempt to fix this issue, but of course it's incomplete in that only certain people are eligible for the H-1Bs and the H-1Bs are oversaturated already. And to me, it's a bit indicative of the problems we always have with immigration. That is, we have patches upon patches that are fixing patches when what really is needed is a comprehensive look at all of this. And because of all of the patches, immigration becomes almost impossible to navigate and unsatisfactory for pretty much everybody.
You don't know how many times I've heard from just prospective clients or clients who, have hired us to do a family-based adjustment or a visa process. They get really frustrated because their perception is that they're going through this process legally. And why is it taking so long? Why is it so expensive? Why are they being asked for so much documentation when, again, this is their perception?
Hmm.
Everyone's just waltzing into the southern border and getting a green card. And I think it's because our system is so dysfunctional now. I mean, it's really almost decrepit. Um, And you can see it. I mean, the symptoms are, these long delays, these constant, patches, these executive orders and these reinterpretations of policies to try to fix things on a very ad hoc basis. And don't know how much longer we can keep going on like this without, seeming almost like a third world, country in how we process our immigration cases. And it can be very disheartening to our clients and I think to the public in general. Something needs to be done, but
Wait, you're telling me, Helena, that in your consultations you haven't been advising people to go to the southern border and just waltz in? That's like that's been,
I have
and
not
I'm
advised anyone to
charging.
do that. I have had, okay, especially at the beginning of the war with Ukraine, there were a lot of,
I
I'm
meant
going
it. I meant
and
it solely as a joke.
I know, but it's real. People do, and it, obviously, it certainly happened, and you've had, individuals from countries that are nowhere near the southern border
Yeah.
who have, used that as a way, as a, last resort measure to get here. And sometimes these patches are needed and make sense, like you for you, the Ukrainian, parole program, electronic, really fast at the beginning, when it was first announced, really did cure kind of an unanticipated, you know, crisis at the border. But in general, it's not ideal to have our our legal system and our legal institutions function like this. Especially when they're so subject to these executive orders and these policy changes are just subject to just obviously if there's a change in administration, there's going to be a lot of these policies that you and I think are great are going to be axed immediately, I think.
I advise them to use the foxtrot and not the waltz. I've been thinking about that joke for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, and that
And
was
to
a
be,
delayed
it
reaction,
was
a
it
very
right, right.
delayed. I said waltz like at least
But you
five
said no,
seconds
you
ago.
said it twice. You said it
Okay,
twice, so it
I
counts. It
did. Okay.
restarted. But to be clear, just I mean, jokes aside, nobody is getting a green card by coming in at the southern border.
Exactly.
At
But
best, they're getting in a long line to get asylum. That is the best
right.
happening at the southern border, and most of them are
Exactly.
getting denied.
But that's not the public perception. And as
Right.
we all know, perception can be reality or certainly affects reality. And that is not what the general public believes right now.
Well, if we're making stuff up, go foxtrot through Mexico, everybody. That's you heard it here on Tetzeli Talks first.
From Kevin's mouth.
We're running time on this, the first ever Tetzeli Talks, but literally a couple hours ago, Secretary Mayorkas of the Department of Homeland Security announced an extension and importantly,
Thank
redesignation
you.
of temporary
Mhm.
protected status for Haiti. What the heck is that all about?
I just know I was really happy because yesterday I had a call with a prospective client who had a family member, I think it was a cousin here from Haiti. She's a Haitian citizen, has a 3-year-old US citizen child. Child was born here 3 years ago while she was here. She has a visitor visa. She went back to Haiti. Obviously, things there have devolved even more. And they were just flown out by military helicopter because the child is a US citizen and the US Embassy there has been helping US citizens leave. Because the mom had a visitor visa, they were both able to come together. And they called wanting to know what her path forward was to be able to stay here. Because they believe this situation in Haiti is fairly hopeless right now. And we discussed the possibility of asylum and the limitations of that. And I said it's too bad she doesn't qualify for TPS right now because she just got here this morning. There in the Miami Herald, redesignation of TPS for Haiti. So I just got on the phone with them, and they're thrilled. So that's great. That doesn't always happen. Happens too rarely, but
You should start verbalizing other immigration policy changes just every morning. Wake up and say, I wish
manifesting them, right? Yeah,
manifest. I wish we could give green cards to the dreamers. Just like maybe
sure.
say that tomorrow morning. See,
Yeah, there was a book about that, but I didn't read it a few years ago about visualizing things and yeah,
manifesting immigration
manifesting,
policy in the end.
manifesting what you want to happen. Yeah, yeah, okay.
But
Yeah.
it's
Why not?
it's important because an extension of TPS for Haiti or any individual country that has TPS already, it's a good thing for the people who currently have TPS. But a redesignation, right? That allows initial applications. And I'm just reading the website right now. DHS estimates that 309 individuals will now be able to apply for TPS from Haiti if they're in America already because of the redesignation, separate from the extension. So redesignation is a big deal and it doesn't happen often, right?
No, it does not. So yeah, that was a nice bright moment to my morning. Yeah.
Shout out to the Kurzban law firm's lawsuit with Mayor Brown and many other entities during the last administration when they were going to terminate TPS for Haiti. Since we and Mayor Brown and the National Lawyers Guild and all the other entities succeeded in that case, TPS for Haiti has been redesignated two or three times by the Biden administration and extended, and Haiti's president was assassinated, and gangs started controlling the entirety of Port-au-Prince, and the United Nations just sent Kenyan peacekeepers to stabilize that country. I just cannot think of a more important lawsuit that happened, forget about us, than that. If we had instead deported all of the Haitians to the country that really became one of the worst countries in the world shortly after the last administration left office. It really goes to show you how important TPS is and how misguided that policy from the prior administration was, if I could just step on a soapbox for one
Mm.
second.
And I hope you don't have to dust off those briefs in the Sajek case after November, Kevin.
It wasn't just us, ACLU
I
made a
know.
lawsuit. There were this.
I meant the, the communal collective
Yeah, the
too. Yeah.
communal us. But
Yeah.
it's stark. Yes, it's different administrations, but even a second term Trump administration, I cannot imagine with everything that happened to Haiti that they would have gone through.
Really.
I don't know. Those who knows what a second term Trump administration would have done, but here we are with redesignations and in our
Let's be
opinion,
happy
well
for
warranted.
today's good news.
That's
Exactly.
right.
Yeah, correct.
Well. That is the end of the first episode of Tetzeli Talks. We hope you very much enjoyed it. We're going to do this regularly because if there's one thing we know, it's that immigration continuously needs to be updated and that you guys all need to hear it. So, with nothing else left to say, I'm Kevin Gregg, and with me is.
Helena Tetzeli, have a good weekend, Kevin Gregg.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye, Helena.
Happy surfing. Bye.